morning, good afternoon, how are you?
Thank you, nice to see you and all those beaming young faces beside you.
Yes, so we would like to say a loud hello to all of you. So 1, 2, 3.
Hello.
We have some...
Good morning, young authors.
Good morning.
So we have about 200, 250 fans of yours in this auditorium at India International Centre. We are so thrilled and we consider ourselves fortunate to have you with us for this session. And how are you feeling to join us?
Fine, I'd love to be with you there, personally.
And how cold is it up there in Landor?
It's extremely cold this morning. I'm all covered up in mufflers, sweaters, whatever I can find. It's sunny, but it's windy, so that makes it, the wind chill is there.
I understand. Ruskin sir, you are an
I got ready specially for you, otherwise I'd be in bed in my pajamas now.
We are very sorry also, but we are very grateful also that you could manage to get up, get dressed and join us for this session. We are of course signing in from the Muskaan Literature Festival for child authors, and I don't know if you can see us, but all of these are the lovely child authors who've collected from all over the country for this session. And they have a bunch of questions to ask you. But what we are really looking forward to is a lot of motivation from you for being great writers. So is there any secret sauce to becoming a good writer?
Secret? No, I don't think so. I think the secret is in your mind, in your desire to be a writer, and your love of books and literature. These are the things I think that are at the bottom of your of your wish to write.
Right. And so how young were you when you penned your first story or your first poem?
Well, when I was at school, I used to write funny stories, which were not very popular with my teachers. But as soon as I finished school, I started writing short stories when I was 16, and in fact, the first was published when I was 16 in one of our magazines here.
Right, and we have authors as young as 8 years old with us here. And I would love for you all to ask questions now after I field the last question to Sir. So we've been having this debate about whether writing prose is easier or poetry is easier and which one should one pursue. And since you write both, I would love to know from you, what is it for you? Stories or poetry?
Well, prose is something I can do any day, every day. And in fact, every morning I usually write a page or two. Poetry is something that comes occasionally. And oddly enough, this morning I suddenly wanted to write a poem because at night it was running through my head.
Wow.
And I wanted to, in a way, honor old trees which have been with us for centuries. And I said, we must celebrate old trees, not just young trees, and preserve them, look after them. And I wrote a poem about that. So I think a poem is not something you will be doing on a regular basis because it's not something that that you can force.
Right. It has to come to you.
With prose can become an exercise, a habit,
Right.
And you teach yourself, or you become in the habit of doing it at regular hours even.
Right. Okay. So now we can take questions from students. We have many hands that have gone up. I will begin with you. Share your name also.
Good morning, sir. I'm Varshia.
Good morning. I can't see you, but I can hear you, yeah?
And I have written an anthology of my poems. So I wanted to ask you, what books did you read that inspired you to become a writer in the future?
Well, I was a bookworm, I have to admit. You see, I think basically we are readers first and writers second, in that order, because it's through a love of books that we want to write. And Well, I started with a big book of nursery rhymes, so maybe that's the basis for writing poetry, or at least rhyming poetry, and verse and limericks and even, funny rhymes. So there was poetry in the beginning, and then of course there were storybooks and adventure stories, and I grew up to read, well, practically everything. In fact, the more you read, the better you will write. So I always encourage young writers to read as much as they can.
Thank you, sir.
They like tedious, no matter how famous it is. You find what you like and what you enjoy, and that will help you.
Right. So, Mr. Bond, who are the most exciting and thrilling children's authors out there who you have enjoyed, not boring ones?
Well, I grew up. The school had a library. The junior school, a small one. The senior school, a big one. So most good schools have libraries, so you can have a choice of books. But I really became a bookworm when my mother and stepfather took me out on a hunting trip or shikar trip in the forest near Dehradun, and they went out trying to shoot a tiger, which they never saw or found, but they left me alone in this dark bungalow, lonely dark bungalow, and there I discovered a shelf of books which had been untouched for years, covered in dust, and I found all kinds of writers, P.G. Woodhouse's funny novels, Agatha Christie's mysteries, ghost stories by M.R. James, and David Copperfield by Charles Dickens, and in that 1 week I read 4 or 5 books, while the hunters or shikaris were plunging through the jungle, looking for, trying to shoot beasts which they could never find. So I think I had more of an adventure in the forest bungalow than they did in the forest.
How wonderful. I always love it when you share that story. We have another question for you from, yes, please share your name.
Sir, I'm Abhiraj, and I had come to Mussoorie at your house and I delivered a sketch of yours some months earlier. And coming to the topic, my question is, how did you face the problems, there are problems when you write a book. How did you face them?
Yeah. Well, before you sit down to write a book or a story, write it in your mind. Have a clear idea of what you're going to say and what you're going to write about. Make notes if you can. So then it's easier when you start the story or the book, that you won't stumble or you won't get stuck halfway through. Sometimes in school when you're writing an essay, halfway through you think, now what do I write next? How do I finish this essay? So it's always good to be prepared. That's the old Boy Scout motto, be prepared. And it also applies to writing. So plan and your story or your book beforehand. Write it in your head, visualize it, see it like a film in a way. And that will help you to go along. Of course, then there are problems of vocabulary and grammar. Well, these things you'll get overcome the more you read and the more you write. So don't worry too much about that, but have in your mind a concept of what you're going to write.
Lovely. Thank you, sir. And the next question is coming to you from Ocean.
Good afternoon, sir. It's a pleasure talking to you. My question for you is that how do you remain innovative in your writing?
How do I remain innovative? Well, it can be a problem at sometimes. You might just run out of ideas or inspiration. But that's why I think it's important for a writer to keep a notebook, to jot things down, thoughts, observations, ideas. So later on, as time goes by, you've got something to fall back on. Then you don't run out of material. And you can also, the advantage of getting older in my case is the more I have to look back upon. There's so many people I've known, things that have happened. So there's a lot to write about. Of course, when you're very young, you have to write out your own experience, as I did with my first book. So write about the things that happen around you. Write about your family members, your schoolmates, your teachers, your environment, so that you're not having to imagine a science fiction or a fantasy or something. It's all there ready. Life is happening around you. Observe it and put it down. And then stories will come too. Because everybody is a story and has a story to tell.
Because everybody is a story and has a story to tell. On that note, where's the next question coming from? Here.
Greetings, sir. So myself, Anushka Dalal. As the authors, as the writers, we came across so many books, and my question to you is that which book made you cry? Like your books make us happy a lot, so I would ask you the reciprocate of that.
I love this question, sir. Which book has made you cry?
Cry. A lot of books have made me laugh and made me cry. Let's see. I think when I first read David Copperfield, and when I was 11 years old, and I cried when little David got a beating from his stepfather, and then he ran away from home, and he had a lot of hardship as a small boy. Then perhaps I cried a little bit. There were some very tender scenes in that novel Little Women by Louisa May Alcott, which some of you may have read, which made me want to cry, even if I didn't cry. So there are so many great stories. Wuthering Heights, it moved me. I didn't cry, but it made me emotionally involved. So that's an interesting question. So make a list of the books that make you cry. Make a list of the books that make you laugh. And then see which ones you prefer.
Right. Thank you for that answer, sir. Next question is from Kahan.
Sir, I'm Kahan from Ahmedabad and the author of Firestorm. I wanted to ask you, what makes a good story? How do you capture the reader's attention so that they want to finish the whole book?
Oh, that's a good question. How do you capture the reader's attention? Especially when you're writing for young readers, when you're writing for children, because you see, an adult might put up with a couple of chapters of description or just padding, hoping that the book will get interesting as you go along. But a young boy or girl isn't going to do that. You have to catch his or her attention on page one and get them involved in the story. So you have to have a good story to tell. You have to have interesting characters, and preferably one with whom the reader can identify. You, as a boy or a girl, should be able to identify with the central character, one of them. And so that you're involved in the story and that it's happening to you as well. So that, I think that's so important, especially if I look back in, great adventure stories like Treasure Island or books of that nature, seafaring stories, adventure stories, the 39 Steps, mystery stories. Children love a good mystery. So you got to get into the story straight away.
Right. Thank you so much.
I think adults, they put up with you for 2 or 3 chapters before they throw the book away. But if you don't hold the attention of the young reader right away, then he or she is going to throw the book away too.
Right. Thank you for that answer, sir. Very candid. The next question is from Devisha.
Greetings, sir. My name is Devisha Malhotra. It's a pleasure to be talking to you. And my question for you is that at any point in your journey, did you feel like you just wanted to leave writing behind and follow your other passions?
Wow. That's a very challenging question. Not really, because I wasn't very good at anything else, to tell you the truth. So I have to stick with what I knew I was good at, and that was writing. But I did have disappointments. I had failures. In my 20s, 30s, there were times when I wasn't writing as well as I thought I could. Sometimes stories of novels got rejected, as they often do. But I kept on with it because I knew that this is what I enjoyed doing. This is where I had a passion to write. So regardless of whether I got published or not, I was going to write. I was going to write stories, poetry. I would keep a journal. I've kept a diary off and on throughout my life because there was a passion to write. So if somebody published me, good. If there were readers who enjoyed what I'd written, even better. And over the years, so gradually I accumulated readers, let's say, so that over the period of 70 years that I've been writing, it has been a gradual process, not an overnight success, but a gradual process towards finding readers like you, and many of you too, and that's given me great encouragement and satisfaction and happiness.
Right. Thank you, sir. The next question is from Dharman.
Good morning, sir. I'm Dharman and I'm the author of The Rising Flames. Sir, I would like to ask that you give so many characters in your book, so how do you manage to give them a background story?
Oh, characters, yes. Well, most of my characters, I would say, are based on real people. But they're not exactly, they're not duplicates of real people. I change them around, or I might invent characteristics which were not there to make them more interesting. But you will find that with most writers, I think, most books, whether it's a novel or a short story, the characters emanate from reality and from people you've known. They'll be there in your subconscious in a way. So even if you think you've invented a character, that character will have characteristics of someone you have known. So you may not have exactly portrayed that person, but he or she will be there at the back of your mind.
Right.
So characters can be real people, they can be invented people, but there's usually a basic character who's influenced you in your life.
Right. So among all the characters that you have created, which are few that you are very fond of, among your own characters?
Well, I often write about an imaginary grandfather. A lot of people think I'm writing about a real grandfather, but I'm not. Because my grandfather passed away before I was born. But my grandfather's stories are popular because I invented the ideal grandfather.
Right.
He had some of the characteristics of the grandfather that I was told about, because my mother used to tell stories about him. But basically I invented him.
Right.
So Granny too is another character. Relatives, my eccentric Uncle Ken, who's always getting into trouble. Then characters, my friends. I have a lot of my stories about boys and girls I grew up with. So there was Ranji, and there was Kishan, and there was Somi, and so many, and they recur in some of my stories. Early stories, later stories. It's nice sometimes to come back to a favorite character.
Right. Thank you so much, sir. Next question is again from a child. Her name is Isha.
Good morning, sir. So, whenever we read a story, which was, at last, it was written down, it was written by Ruskin Bond, there was this question, write a character sketch of Ruskin Bond in 40 to 50 words. So, I know the word limit is far more less to explain the amazing personality of yours. But at the very same time, one thing which I noticed was, this line is very common, Mr. Ruskin Bond is a nature lover. So, I'm very keen to just know that whenever you're trying to explain, the beauty of the nature, how do you exactly find the words which you're going to use in order to explain the surroundings?
Words are all important, aren't they? Because I think you need to have a good vocabulary, even if you don't use all the words you know. You shouldn't use very difficult or pompous words to bother you. We use the exact word. But now when I write about nature, you use, what is one writing about? You're writing about visual things, visual matters. You're writing about color, the color of the sky, the color of the mountains, the color of the river, the color of trees, the color of flowers. Each flower has a different color. So you have to be descriptive. And in being descriptive, you have to use words, and you have to look for different words, a variety of words. You can't use the same word all the time. You can't just say, oh, it's a beautiful scene. You've got to tell the reader why it's beautiful, and what there is there that appeals to you. So words are all important because you need different words for different things, for different aspects of nature. So if you want to describe the sunset, you don't just say a beautiful sunset. No? You say, well, the sky look at the color of apricots, something like that.
How wonderful. Thank you. And we have another question for you from Adya.
Hello sir, good morning. My name is Adya and me and my friends have a question for you. Can you please give some suggestions for the students who want to pursue writing as their career? And also can you please tell your success mantra that you always follow?
Gosh, well, if you're going to make writing as a career, that's the risk you're going to take. Because while today, certainly, things are much better for writers than they used to be from the point of view of making a living. It's still pretty tricky because you might write a book, you might get it published, it might bring in a couple of thousand rupees, and then what? You've got to keep earning, and you can't just produce books and stories like a machine. Some people think I produce them like a machine, but then I have been writing for 70 years. So if I write 2 books a year, then in over 70 years I have at least 140. But so you can't afford, if you make it a career, a profession, you've got to keep writing and working regularly. So discipline is all important. The quality of your work has to be there. People will want to publish you. You see, okay, when you're 10, 12, 15, and you write a story or a book, well, mommy and daddy might be happy to pay for publication. But as you get older and you want to earn money from your books or from your writing, then you have to convince the publisher to take it on at their expense so that you can make some money on it eventually. Because if you're going to make it a career or profession, that means you've got to earn money from your writing.
Right.
And that's not an easy thing to do. So that's why a lot of writers, if you look at them over the years, even famous writers, they might have had to begin with another profession. And it's only when they became successful and their books started selling well, that they might have given up their original profession and become full-time writers, just as say Muskaan Bond did. He was a doctor, A.J. Cronin, he was a doctor. When they became successful writers, they stopped practicing. Others, there were, T.S. Eliot was a banker, and so he continued as a banker until he became a famous writer, and they made money. But there have been others who, like Dickens, who just started off as a young man, as a reporter. He started off as a journalist, and then when he wrote his first novel, Pickwick Papers, he became famous instantly. So you can become famous overnight, but that's very, very rare. It usually takes many years of hard work to be successful.
Sir, at what age did you think you became a successful writer?
I think I just was zitty, perseverance. I didn't accept failure. So even though there were disappointments and failures, I said, I'm going to keep writing, and that's the one thing I wanted to do, and nobody was going to stop me.
Right. So we have a quick question from Ayan.
Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Ayan. My question is that which moment in your life felt special to you, and what did you feel when your first book got issued?
Yes, well, that first book is always very special. It gives you a thrill, yes, that you finally took all the hard work you did. It's now come out in between covers, and it looks good, and hopefully people are going to read it and like it, and it does give you a thrill. In my case, though, my first book, it came out in England after I'd come back to India. So it didn't make a big splash, or in those days we didn't have book launches and things like that. We didn't have Lit Fest, we didn't have all these events like yours at the moment. So it was rather a lonely profession. But all the same, it was always good to see your first book when it came out, and when you opened the parcel, there it was, it come from the publisher. Not just the first book, the first story. Because when my first story was published, I was just out of school and I got 50 rupees from the Illustrated Weekly of India, and I showed the story to all my friends, and when they saw I had a check for 50 rupees, they said, "Party, Ruskin, party." So all my young friends, my age, they were 15, 16, we had a big party on the roof of the house, and well, they were very innocent parties in those days, fizzy drinks and lots of cakes and pastries, samosas and jalebis, the things I still like eating. So those were thrilling moments, yes, getting your first story published, your first book published, and it's still a thrill to me when I get a book published or a story published, provided it comes out comes out well produced. That's important too.
Right. Next question from, you're answering so many questions so rapidly for us. Thank you so much. Can we have a round of applause for sir? I believe it's on a really cold day in Landor that he's woken up, gotten dressed, sat there.
You're warming me up with all your questions.
Perfect. So then we'll give you a few more. Aditi.
Okay, so good afternoon, sir. My question is that are you currently working on a book or thinking of writing one?
No, I'm always working on something. I'm working at the moment I'm working on my journal, which is specifically for the particular journal I started last year, which I will continue. And this is a journal which tells you something about my writing life, it tells you something about my present life, it tells you about nature, it tells you about books and writing, and hopefully it will be useful. Like Samset Mohan wrote his, it's called a writer's notebook, which is very helpful to writers too. So perhaps this book will also be helpful to you, because it will tell you a lot about writing, publishing, success. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Next question is from Dhruv.
So I have two main questions. So the first question is, of all the books you have written, is there a particular one you would like to remember as your favorite, or the books you have published till now? Any book that you thought
Well, in many ways, the first book, the first novel is like one's first child, is a favorite. The Room on the Roof, it reflects me as I was then. It's a book about adolescence, by an adolescent, and that's what makes it a bit different. So the first book, the first story, one has a special affection for it. But there have been many. Actually, when I'm sitting down and writing and enjoying the process of writing a particular story or essay, that one is my favorite. It's good to feel, oh, this is my best, even if later on it's no better than any other.
Right, thank you, sir. And one last question from Saina.
Good morning, Mr. Bond. It's an honor to be interacting with you today. My name is Saina Serene, and my question to you is that after you published your first novel, which was The Room on the Roof, what kept your writing so consistent? And before the launch of a new book, are you ever worried about what your readers will think?
Well, not really. You see, you know you're not going to please everybody. Some writers have an appeal to a particular kind of reader. I might like certain authors that you don't like. You might like certain authors that I don't like. So a writer doesn't really expect that everybody should, like what he's written. So in a way, you're writing for yourself. You should be pleased with what you've written. And hopefully out there, somebody else will be pleased too. The consistency that came after writing my first novel, there was a gap in publication, but there was never a gap in writing, because I wrote a sequel which took some time to get published. I wrote a lot. You see, back in those days, in the 1950s, 1960s, in India, we didn't have many publishers of literature or fiction. There were school book publishers and others, but not creative writing. Didn't have many outlets. So you very often had to, if it's a book, you had to try and get it published abroad. But we had lots of magazines and newspapers, and so I wrote lots of short stories, hundreds of them, which came out in magazines and papers. And those stories later on, when we had publishers too, many book publishers, so they came out in collections and in anthologies, and which saved me also a lot of time and effort, because the material, the stories were there. So even when I was writing new ones, I had a backlog too. So it was the advantage, I think, of writing over a long period of time and writing consistently, which is the word you use.
Right. So unfortunately, that's all the time we have for questions. You can all...
You will tell me. I shall now have what shall I have? A cup of cocoa to soothe my throat.
Right, absolutely. Oh, I wish all of us could be in the mountains with you. And I wish we could have volleyed the questions right from the valley and shouted up to Landor. And you could have answered our questions from there. But still, thank you so much for being so patient, for listening to all of our questions. We are truly blessed, we are so honored, and it's a wonderful winter morning for all of us who are here. I believe so.
Thank you. Good luck to all of you. Good luck to your writing.
But please don't go. We have a small gift for you, which we will somehow send to you, and here Devyani will tell you about it.
Hello sir, I am Devyani and I have a twin sister Shivranjani. We sent you a book also named Sun Salutations. So first of all, we would like to thank the Prabha Khaitan Foundation, Muskaan and you for autographing the books and giving it to us. And this is a caricature painting we have made of you. It's a small token of love which we are giving with from all the authors sitting here and both of us. So we will tell the Muskaan team to send it to you.
It's a beautiful caricature. Ruskin sir, are you able to see it? Are you able to see the caricature?
Yes, no, I'd love to see it.
Can we project it for sir to see?
Put it out for me to see.
Technical team, can we project it? Is it possible? Okay, it's not possible, Ruskin sir, for us to project it to you.
I can see you very far away, holding the caricature, but I can't make it out with these.
Is it better?
No, it's a speck in the distance. So
okay, but we'll send it over to you. And on that note, we offer our profuse gratitude to you. Thank you for blessing us with your presence. And even if digitally meeting a legend always feels nice. Thank you. Let's have a louder applause. Thank you. Thank you from all of us. Thank you from the Prabha Khaitan Foundation and the Muskaan Literature Festival. Thank you.
Thank you.